The sound of the alarm fades, and with it, their surroundings. A curious, choking mist swirls up around them. Perspectives shift disconcertingly, and the trio find themselves somewhere else entirely. What glimpses they can make out of their wider environment make little sense. The scale and proportions seem wildly off, as if they are ants trying to make sense of an amphitheatre. Wherever they are, it is dark and very, very hot. Uncomfortably so, in fact. That, though, is the least of their concerns. "Can't breathe!" Tatters gasps, clawing at her throat. The mist smells acrid and burns her nose and throat as she inhales. Ahead of her, she can just make out Lynn through the gloom. The woman has pulled a crowbar from her backpack and, aided by her sister, is frantically levering open a set of tall, odd-looking containers, no doubt in the hope of finding some sort of breathing apparatus. It is a vain hope. Tatters, growing dizzy, stumbles to their side, rifling desperately through the contents of the containers, hoping for something, anything that will let her breathe, but she finds nothing that makes any sense to her. Her throat and lungs are on fire. Her heart is hammering in her chest as she drops, helpless, to her knees. Distantly, she hears Lynn's crowbar fall to the metal floor with a dull clang. She tries to gather her thoughts, but they have become fragmented and incoherent. Thinking straight is like trying to catch smoke. Her vision fades, slowly, to black. Hello and welcome to The Lone Adventurer, an actual play solo RPG podcast with me, Carl White. I will be your narrator, your game master, and your guide as we follow our heroes on their journey into the unknown. For this game, I will be using the Chasing Adventure rule set, as well as a variety of other systems, tools, and tables as they take my fancy. A word of warning: the following scenes may contain mature themes and disturbing imagery. Listener discretion is advised. The adventure continues. Last time on The Lone Adventurer, Tatters rescued the Vale sisters from the effect of a leaking gas pipe while exploring the vast arms factory Hammerhold. She then discovered evidence of her theory that the factory was being spliced into the great machine. Unfortunately, it was at this point that the demon Satara emerged, once again fighting Tatters for control of her body. Although the Arcanist won that battle, in doing so, she revealed her diabolical secret to the Vale sisters. Still, a tentative truce remained between them, and the trio pressed on. That was until the dark magic at work in Hammerhold twisted and blurred reality, and revealed the full extent of the conjoining at play. Hammerhold had been linked to one of the Doomspires, one that had seemingly activated. The same Doomspire that is fated to be visited by Mina Montesario. Tatters is brought rudely back to consciousness with a stinging slap to the face. She blinks, looking up into the grinning face of Lynn Vale. "Glad to have you back with us," the bodyguard smiles broadly, pulling Tatters to her feet. "I thought we'd lost you there for a moment. Hell, I thought we were all lost." Tatters looks about her. They are back in Hammerhold, standing in the shadow of that huge boiler. There is no sign of the Doomspire, or of that strange, mist-enshrouded hellscape. Mara stands nearby and, is uncharacteristically smiling also. Tatters looks from one to the other and has the distinct impression that something has changed, though she has no idea what. There is a sense of lightness in both of them, of some hidden tension now released. "What's with you two? What have I missed?" There is a slightly awkward pause. Lynn opens her mouth on the verge of answering, but Mara interrupts. "What, aside from the fact that we all made it out of wherever that was with little more than sore throats and a lost crowbar? Or that the alarm seems to have stopped?" "I'd say you should count your blessings, girl. We could all be dead." Tatters senses there is something more to it than that, but she does not press the point. True enough, wherever that was, I've no desire to go back any time soon. More evidence, if evidence was needed, that this magical working the voice of the machine is embarked upon needs to be stopped. She pauses a moment and then says hesitantly, "The tower we saw, in the void sea, that was a Doomspire, wasn't it?" The sisters shrug, perhaps unfamiliar with the term, but Tatters barely notices. An actual Doomspire? But they've been dormant for thousands of years, or so the stories go. And yet we saw one clearly activate in front of our eyes. How is that? Her eyes go wide. "Oh no. Oh no, no, no. Seven save us, it can't be." Mara moves closer, the familiar scowl back in place, the smile that had so briefly lit up her face, nothing but a distant memory. "What is it? Come on, girl. Spit it out." Tatters looks sick. "I missed something. When I saw the conjoining of the fabric, it was too big. I couldn't see it all." "Tell us," says Lynn, more kindly than her sister. "What did you miss?" Tatters takes a deep, painful breath. "You know, before when I said that the Hammerhold and the Great Machine were not on the same plane of existence? Well, the Great Machine lies in another dimension, as far as I can make out, one that can be accessed from within the chain link on which this city stands. That physical proximity is what permits the cross-planar ritual to be possible, but linking the Great Machine with Hammerhold is not the real purpose. Hammerhold is just a conduit to the Doomspires." The sisters stare at her, uncomprehending. "And that's supposed to be an explanation, is it?" Lynn asks. Tatters tries again. "We saw a Doomspire activate, right? That is what this ritual is for. By connecting the power of the Great Machine via Hammerhold with the Doomspires, the voice intends to reactivate them all." Lynn shrugs, though her usual laconic demeanour is notably absent. "So what? What are these Doomspire things then?" "Weapons. Doomsday weapons built before the Shattering by the Seven themselves, or so legend would have it. Remember what Tortimer said about the Ring of Winter? About what it wanted? I don't think the voice of the machine is in control of this situation anymore. I think the ring has taken over, and it has found a way to achieve its goal. It means to bring about the end of the world." I mentioned last time that prompt, Toxic Relief, combined with some other prompts, had provided me with a series of answers, some of which were to questions I had been wondering about for a long time. Now we know what the voice of the machine is up to in Hammerhold. We know how the Doomspire activated and why. And, perhaps most satisfyingly of all, at least for me, we know how that damn crowbar turned up back in episode 4 of this series. That last detail had been a niggle that had always nagged at me. Nothing else in the established fiction tied in with the fact that there were other explorers in Mina's Doomspire. So how on earth had that crowbar appeared? Who were these mysterious explorers? All that felt annoyingly incongruous. And so, when I was gifted a solution by my GM emulator, I seized it with gratitude and offered up hymns and prayers of thanks to the dice gods. Well, metaphorically. I started the episode with a scene named Flee the Alarm, and had the scene altered by Mythic with the change that a character was added. The most obvious NPC to add was machine cultists coming to investigate the alarm, but Mythic nixed that idea. Then I had a thought. The context included a vision of the Doomspire coming to life. It was a loose sort of interpretation of a character, but we had previously seen that the Doomspire was sentient, so it kind of makes sense. Could the Doomspire be the character that Mythic was referring to? Yes, it was, Mythic confirmed, and so I asked one final question. Were the party transported by the power of the reality-warping ritual to the place where Mina had found the crowbar? Was that how this character manifested? And sure enough, yes they were, and yes it was. Hats off, Mythic. That was completely out of left field, but also completely fitting. Exceptional work, my virtual GM. This development posed a problem for me, but also a solution. The problem being that when Mina had explored this location, her and Cadmus were wearing depth suits to protect them from toxic gas. Our current party had no such safety measures. The solution was that this provided an explanation of why the party were breaking into containers with a crowbar. They were desperate to find anything that could save them from asphyxiation. I made an examine move with the question, what here can save us? But I rolled a 6. There were no answers to be found here, and things were starting to look grim. Because of that failed roll, I then made a random GM move, and the one that came up was change the environment. They'd been transported back. I'm not going to go through all of the mechanical detail of what happened next, not least because whatever secret the Vale sisters are keeping has not yet come out in the narrative. You can peek behind the curtain in the show notes if you're so inclined. Suffice it to say, we now have somewhat raised stakes for the success of this mission. Fingers crossed. Lynn, astonishingly, seems unconcerned. So, we need to take out the voice of the machine and we need to get the ring. Nothing's changed. Less chatter, more action. Come on. She takes point once again, leaving Tatters and Mara to follow after her, their footsteps echoing through the vast metallic halls of Hammerhold. Tatters is the first to break the uneasy silence. How does she do it? Mara raises a questioning eyebrow. Do what? Stay so calm. We're talking about the end of the world. To her, it's just another mission. Mara shakes her head with a wry smile. Though it's not just another mission, not now. She knows full well what's at stake. If we fail, and if we succeed. It's just her way of coping. Always has been. Keep it light. It's better than coming apart at the seams, right? Tatters glances at Mara. From her neutral expression, the woman appears to be back to her normal, inscrutable self. But by her standards, that little speech was practically a heart-to-heart. She is still considering what might have changed for the sisters, and what to say next when they step into a cavernous chamber. This space, indeed the preceding stretches of corridor, stand in stark contrast to the busy, automated production areas they have encountered thus far. This section of the factory feels as if it has been untouched for years, perhaps even decades. The air is heavy with the scent of rust and old oil, but the machinery that fills this space lies silent and abandoned. The floor is littered with discarded and broken tools and partially dismantled equipment. The walls which must once have been smooth and metallic, are now pockmarked and cracked, paint peeling and flaking with rust. That is not what gives her pause, though. At the center of the room, lighting the entire space in a flickering blue glow, is some sort of arcane manifestation. It hangs in mid-air, a translucent circle of energy crackling with erratic, unstable power. Tatters approaches cautiously. The air in the immediate vicinity of the magic hums with a high-pitched, unnerving frequency, and every so often sparks of raw arcane energy arc off. I think it's some sort of ward. Clearly it's holding something back or keeping something protected, but it's failing. Look, it's barely holding itself together. Lynn eyes the ward suspiciously, then glances around the room. So you're saying that in a factory built to create the most deadly and dangerous weapons the Dominion could dream up, a whole section of it was abandoned, a magical lock was stuck on the door, and now that lock's about to break? Tatters nods. That's about the size of it. Seven only know what sort of experiments were worked on in here, but it looks like whatever they were, it was hoped those secrets would remain buried. My guess is that the convergence ritual has destabilized this ward. How soon before it fails? Mara asks, ever the pragmatist. Tatters can only guess. Weeks? Days? Hours? It's impossible to say with any certainty. And of course that's assuming that things remain as they are right now. As the ritual grows in power, it seems likely that the destabilizing effect will only increase. Well then, Lynn gives voice to what they are all thinking. Best we get a move on. So, in addition to everything else our party is dealing with, we now have another countdown on our hands. Not only is the convergence ritual activating Doomspires, but it is also weakening the magical protections that are holding back experimental weapons so scary that even their designers locked them up and threw away the key. In order to introduce some more peril, because clearly we are so short on peril at present, I think I'm going to use the same countdown mechanic that I'm employing for my see what they find move. Each time that time passes, I will roll a die, starting with the d8 to represent the failing ward. On a 1, I'll reduce the die size by 1. And if I get to a d4 and roll a 1, the ward fails, with predictably unpredictable and no doubt deadly consequences. There is nothing much to report mechanically from this scene. The scene was altered to have Lynn out of the limelight to kick us off, and then I consulted the Oceanic Oracle to see how chatty Mara was feeling, and then I made an examine move, for which I rolled a partial success, even with disadvantage. Lynn has an ability that turns a partial success into a full one, and so I got plenty of information about the nature of the ward and what it might be protecting. And so, with nothing else to cover, let's take Lynn's advice and get a move on.
Labour with alacrity, brother Cos. Rejoice in your holy work. Our secret mission shall not falter. This decadent city of flesh shall fall, to rise once more in service to the great machine.
Lynn, returning from her reconnaissance, slips back behind the pile of crates where Mara and Tatters are hiding. It's not good, I'm afraid. The place is crawling with machine cultists. They're working on some sort of production line, packing up and transporting out weapons in bulk. I can't see an obvious way to get all of us past, and if we get spotted, we're going to have the whole place down on our heads. We're going to have to find another route entirely, I'm afraid. Or we take them on, Mara suggests, though even she doesn't seem particularly convinced of the viability of that plan. Finding another route could add hours to our journey, assuming there's even another route to find, Tatters mutters. Hours we may very well not have. I could possibly teleport us past them, but it's risky, and taking both of you with me is even more so. And taking them on is suicide, plain and simple. I'm sorry, Mara, you two may be good, but you're not that good. There has to be another option.
Always,
whispers a voice from the pit, a voice that only she can hear.
You have but to ask.
Tatters balls her fist, nails biting deep into the flesh of her palm. Go back to hell, demon, she thinks at it in fury. I've told you, my body is my own.
Of course, that is established and agreed. If you want your body all for yourself, as you wish. After all, you went to so much trouble to get it. No, I would ask a smaller price for my aid in this matter. A trifling thing and of little cost to you. Why don't we discuss terms?
It is several moments later when her eyes open, to find Mara and Lynn looking at her in some alarm. What? I'm fine. I think I can manage that teleport after all. Why are you looking at me like that? She follows their gaze down to the puddle of blood slowly pooling beneath her white-knuckled fist. Tatters, and by extension I, are about to attempt something extremely foolhardy, and it's probably worth backing up a little and providing some context to explain why. A few things happened at the start of that last scene. Firstly, I rolled another scene alteration, remove an object and increase an activity. I didn't know what that meant in the context of this scene, and so I went to my see what they find roll, and that shook things up quite a bit. First, I rolled a 1 on my d8, meaning I am 1 die size closer to my ultimate target, the voice of the machine and his ring. Or perhaps it's the ring and its voice. Secondly, a danger was indicated. Denizens guarding something, and an alarm trigger, along with the keywords calm and occupied. This felt like a suitable point to make another GM move, and the one I got was foreshadow an ominous force. I've spoken about ominous forces briefly before. Suffice it to say that in chasing adventure, ominous forces are the villainous plots or the ticking countdowns to doom that grow more urgent and closer to fruition each time the PCs take a settle-in move. I've chosen to handle them a little differently from the core rules, using the same countdown dice mechanic that I've employed for that ward from the previous scene. We will get into that if and when Tatters takes the settle-in or the crumble move, but for now just be aware that I have 6 ominous forces, each with a die type against it, that can get triggered for possible progression in the case of a settle-in move, a crumble move, or a foreshadow an ominous force move. For this particular foreshadow an ominous force move, I checked to see which ominous force it was, and it turned out to be Civil War in Kairos. That one I had set at a d6, and so I rolled that d6 and got a 1. The die size was reduced to a d4, and we were one step closer to the fall of the Archdominar's forces. Next, I interpreted this development in the fiction, which gave me my weapons production line, and then I made an examine move to see if my party could find a way to get past unseen. Naturally, I failed this roll, which triggered another GM move, namely make them choose. And the choice was between make things more difficult in the future and assist an enemy with their goals. I particularly enjoy these difficult choices that my GM emulator throws up from time to time, and this one was a perfectly timed way to reintroduce the troublesome demon back into our tale. And so we come to the foolhardy thing that Tatters is about to attempt. Stuck as she often is between a rock and a hard place, she's about to try something that could conceivably bring her entire mission and indeed her life, to a screeching halt. Let's see how that goes. Tatters is on the verge of beginning the ritual when Lynn hisses at her from a vantage point atop the crates. "Wait, I think they're thinning out. Yes, a good half of them are leaving with the weapons." She clambers down. "There's still too many of them to take on, but I think I should be able to sneak past without getting spotted. Would that make things any easier?" Tatters nods. "Absolutely. I can take others with me when I teleport, but it's a lot harder for me to do. The fewer people I take, the better. The last time I teleported a group, I was laid up for a week. If you're sure you can make it across yourself, I can take Mara." Mara looks uncomfortable. "I'm not happy about us splitting up. How about I stick with you, Lynn? Make it easier on the girl." Lynn flashes her lopsided grin at her sister. "I hate to be the one to break it to you, sis, but you do subterfuge about as well as a battering ram. Besides, I'm heading that way." She points up to the narrow rafters spanning the chamber high above. "Think you can keep up?" Mara scowls, but she knows her limits. "Fine, just be careful." Lynn blows her a kiss, half mocking, half fond, and then sets to scaling the stack of crates. Mara turns back to Tatters. "So, how does this work?" The young arcanist looks distracted, though, deep in thought. "Give me a second. If it's just the two of us..." She comes to a decision. "I can do this. I don't need anything else. Take my hand, Mara." Within her, the demon snarls, denied its prize. As Mara tracks her sister's progress overhead, Tatters summons her will and focuses on a secluded spot on the far side of the hall, hidden by barrels close to the exit that they need. Tendrils of purple smoke coalesce around them, swirling ever faster, then implode, leaving nothing behind save the faint tang of brimstone. A mere instant later, the pair reappear on the far side of the room, Tatters sweating with the strain of what she has just done, Mara fighting down the urge to vomit. "We made it," Tatters whispers. But in that same instant, a cry goes up from one of the cultists.
"My brother gods, look above you! There, the rafters! An interloper!"
So, as it turned out, thanks to yet another altered scene, I didn't make the incredibly foolhardy move that I'd planned, and instead just made an averagely foolhardy one. Who says that Mythic can't be helpful when it wants to be? You see, Mythic altered that scene by asking me to remove a character or reduce or remove an activity. Logically, it seemed to me that this meant some cultists left, allowing Lynn to take advantage of her stealthy athletic descriptors, and to make the follower move Endeavour, and go it alone. And that changed the calculation for Tatters. You see, in order to teleport additional people, she needs to invoke the greater version of her teleport spell. And she can do that by using her equivalent exchange move and pushing herself. The first person beside her goes free, and then she marks a condition for each additional person. But here's the rub. Pushing yourself marks a condition, and as she would be taking 2 people, she'd need to mark 1 more. And Tatters only had 2 conditions left unmarked. That would mean she could complete the teleport, but with the marking of that final condition, she would crumble and be out of the fight. The mission would fail. And so the enormously foolish original plan had been this. Invoke her demonic pact with Satara to have the demon soak the cost of her teleport move. This would be a wisdom roll with disadvantage, and so was very likely to go wrong. And the consequences of a straight fail on this roll, well, it was high stakes, let's put it that way. But with Lynn, being freed to go by herself by that scene alteration, the calculation changed. Now Tatters could teleport for the cost of only one condition without needing the demon's help, as pushing herself would allow her to bring Mara along for the ride. Tatters ends up with just one stat left unmarked, and everybody's happy, right? Well, no, not exactly. Because firstly, being at a single unmarked stat with the hardest part of the mission still to go is not a great place to be at all. And secondly, that follower move, Endeavour, reads as follows. When your follower does a dangerous task alone, they do it to the best of their ability, but they are taken out of the action, trapped, injured, distracted, etc. The GM will say how. I asked what seemed the most likely. Was she spotted? Mythic, of course, said yes. Let's see how they get out of this fine mess. Next time. You have been listening to The Lone Adventurer, a solo RPG podcast played, written and performed by me, Carl White. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider telling your friends about it or leaving a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. It really is a huge help. You can follow me on Blue Sky at theloneadventurer.bsky.social. Email me at theloneadv@gmail.com or follow my blog at carlillustration.wordpress.com. You can find show notes for this episode and all others at theloneadventurer.podbean.com, where I include any links mentioned in the episode, as well as mechanics information. I also include a link to a full episode transcript. The story will continue in the next episode of The Lone Adventurer. Thank you for listening.